South Africa is one of the countries with the most NPOs, non-profit organizations, against a backdrop of terrible social economic decay. And for a very long time, the only way that non-profit organizations approached raising awareness for their organization and in getting funding was through trying to impress with statistics, milestones that they've reached, and presentations. But is there another way, a more effective way, to create awareness and to gain valuable support and funding? Today, we're diving into the heart of storytelling and its transformative impact on the world of nonprofits and even churches, specifically in South Africa. Joining me is a two-time Emmy-nominated filmmaker, writer and storyteller, Bennett, all the way from North Carolina. And we'll unravel the power of stories and learn practical strategies for NPOs and churches to shine in a crowded narrative space. I really hope you enjoy this insightful episode with me. Rain, first of all, welcome, and thanks so much for joining me on this topic. It's so nice to have you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
I think before we dive in, would you mind telling us a bit more about yourself?
Sure. As you said in the intro, I'm from North Carolina in the States, so just right around the corner from you fine folks. And I grew up writing and telling stories. I come from a long line of entertaining storytellers, we'll call them. And I got sidetracked from that as an athlete for a while and came back to it once I realized that wasn't going to be really a profession of mine. And I became a filmmaker. I started with documentary films about 20 years ago now. Time is flying by.
Sure.
And so what's specifically exciting for me about this conversation is I've been working with nonprofits for 20 years because documentary filmmaking kind of lends it's very cause driven, right? As are, most foundations and organizations. So I was doing public service announcements and client projects for nonprofits even when I was first learning. And so that's always been a passion of mine to work with purpose-driven organizations and commercial enterprises as well, because they usually have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And during that time, or since that time, I've made my own creative projects. I became an author and a writer. And then about 6 years ago or so, I had just finished a feature film, my first labor of love, passion project. And excuse me. And I was pretty exhausted after that. And I was looking for something to kind of fill in the gaps for work and income between my big creative projects like that, because it's very much, project driven. And I realized the lessons that I learned on that project, which was very much, there was no crew, there was no budget. And I went around the world to tell this story as cheaply or affordably, we'll say, and efficiently as possible, but also as effectively as possible. So ultimately, there are many lessons, but they all can be condensed down to one, which is how to connect with people in their hearts, so in a way that you inspire them and move them to action when you don't have a lot of resources or time or crew or money, etc. Then when I came out of that, I started asking myself, well, who might be struggling with those same issues? Well, nonprofits, of course, but also many content creators, because at that point, around 2017, now we are all tasked with creating content, if you want to keep up, at least on social media, etc., video specifically, but not everybody is trained to be a filmmaker, a writer, a storyteller, right? So that's who I started serving by manner of public speaking, of doing coaching and consulting, of leading workshops, of helping people who felt that same struggle that I did, being, overwhelmed and under-resourced. And I helped them by understanding how to clarify your message and your story and use whatever tech tools that you have, because it's really not about the tools, it's about the message. So that is my platform now. That is how I help people. I still write and direct my own creative projects. And, I'm a co-founder of a new storytelling startup, and I still help businesses and brands and entrepreneurs tell their stories to connect with their audiences deeper in a way that inspires action within their audiences.
This just confirms that you are absolutely the right guy that we are talking to. So I think before we start talking about what makes stories so effective, let's just take a step back and talk about something important. That is, what is a story? How do we define a story? And what makes a story a powerful story?
Yes, great fundamental question to launch the conversation, because it gets misconstrued a lot. Now, Aristotle would say it is, it has a beginning and a middle and an end, and that's really all you need for a story, and that's true. And we get lost in that, especially when we feel like, we being businesses or organizations, that we have to cram in every bit of information about our product or service or organization and what we do. And so we end up talking a lot or writing a lot and not really telling a cohesive story with a beginning and a middle and an end. How I define the simple one-sentence definition that I use to describe a story is a sequence of events that has created transformation. So it's not just a sequence of events like history, like this happened and then this happened and this happened, that will put people to sleep. It is more like this happened, and because of that, this happened, and because of that, this ultimately happened, and here is what changed. Here's the effect of that, right? Here's the result of that. That ties back to the point of the story. So when you tell a story, especially in a business use, any story has an objective, even if you're just trying to connect with people at the bar or at the pub and make them laugh so that you have human connection and socialization, that's still an objective, right? But in businesses, we generally tie that objective to a call to action. So you have to have shown change in the story in a way that inspires change or action in the audience. And you do that by playing to their emotions 100%. So I'll bring that all back to that simple one-sentence statement again. A story is a sequence of events that has created transformation. Something has changed. That is a must.
And I mean, that is what NPOs and churches are all about, is in creating transformation.
Absolutely.
So I'm just a bit curious, how did it happen that you recognized the power of storytelling versus nonprofits or churches applying for funding and giving statistics and reports compared to just sharing their story?
Well, I studied it. I feel like I inherently knew, because as I said, like, I am a storyteller for my profession. I've been a filmmaker for 20 years, and I've been a writer for less than that, but still for several years. And so I've been a big, huge movie buff my whole life. My whole family has. And so I've understood, at least inherently, the power of stories, but I couldn't really describe it until I saw that space where I could actually benefit people after I finished my first feature film. And then I started studying storytelling. I started learning about the neuroscience behind it. I said earlier about moving people emotionally. That's not just some vague expression about, like, yeah, move them emotionally. I get it, but how? No, it's a real thing that happens in their brain. When you tell a story in the right manner with the right devices, it triggers certain neurochemicals in your audience's brains. It grabs their attention. So you have to establish that connection first. We all know that people make decisions emotionally, even if they're very logical and rational and they're weighing out all the objective data. What makes them connected and listen is a story, which is why I'm sure you all can identify with this in SA, but in the US, like, many politicians, if they're running for election, they start off with, like, I met a lady named Kathy in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
You tell a simple story because that's what connects people's brains and gets them paying attention, because we care about people, because we know someone who reminds us of this lady Kathy. But you're telling that story with the intention of illustrating a larger universal theme. Yes. That's the point of the story, right? Absolutely. But you lock someone's attention by telling them the story. Or if you're in an interview or you're pitching your project, always starting with a story rather is important, because you grab their attention. If you don't have their attention, you're not going to get it by sending them bullet points and product features and data and stats. They're already looking for the door. So the story aspect is really about grabbing their brain's attention. Again, not just the vague term, their attention, locking in their brain so they are connected with you. Once the connection is established, then you can collaborate with each other, and then you can, inspire action, and then you can give them the information that they need. Here's the crux of the issue. Many people, maybe many of your NPOs and churches, think that there is the information and then there's the emotional, storytelling, and that they are two different things and they're mutually exclusive. The intellectual and the emotional. They are not. They are two sides of the same coin. They fit together like the yin yang symbol, right? They are two sides of the same coin. Stories, narrative, is the way we as humans deliver the information that we must get across. I am not saying, I want to be very clear to anyone that's listening, I am not saying that the information, like your product features or your programs at an NPO, I'm not saying conveying that to people is not important. I'm saying the way that you do that is by tying it into a narrative, because that is the way that humans communicate. And it's always been the way humans communicate since the beginning of language. Absolutely. Without question. So that's why it's not just the warm and fuzzies to make someone emotional. It's because that's the strongest way, the most powerful way to communicate, hands down.
I think everybody needs to rewind 5 minutes and just listen to what you've just said again and again and again. Because, actually, like you said, this is the crux of what it is about. So, obviously, the situation in South Africa is not necessarily unique. I think it's also true for other countries. But the reality is that the cake is only so big for NPOs, and they compete with each other for their piece of the cake. So, and I don't know that this is a nasty question to ask, but how would I tell a story about my NPO that will stand out in a saturated landscape of other narratives?
This is a very common issue, and it's an important one and a great question that you've asked, because many times we get in this scarcity mindset. Like you say, the pie is only so big and we all need a piece of it. That's true. But often when we get in competition, we get blinded, or we get tunnel vision, and we just try to do what everyone else is doing. And that is not the manner to make yourself stand out. Now, here's the good thing that most people overlook, which is the bad thing. Your organization, your brand, even if it's a personal brand, should absolutely be different than another organization that is, quote unquote, competing for the same funds, right? That is serving a similar audience. If you don't know what makes you different, or your organization different, and what I mean by that, to be specific, is how you serve the people you serve, exactly what programs you offer, the specific, even more specific, like let's say you're a rare cancer patient. Okay, I'll give you an example from my work. I have worked for many years, over a decade, with a rare cancer foundation here in the States. The cancer is neuroendocrine cancer, carcinoid cancer. And it's a very rare cancer. And there are many organizations that, work to help that community. I have helped this organization understand exactly how they do it. Their goal is to spread education and awareness. It's not the technical knowledge, the medical knowledge. It is more about community building, right? There may be another organization that is very much focused on the treatment options. You know what I mean? And so you have to look long and hard at yourself and your organization and understand How are we trying to solve the problem differently than someone else?
Hmm.
And once you do that, then you understand how you can tell your story differently, because there should be, in marketing, it's called a persona, right? In storytelling, it's called a character. There should be a specific person that you are trying to help. And a lot of times what happens with nonprofits specifically is they want to help everybody, even in their cause. If you asked them that, they would be like, well, what do you mean? We want to help all cancer patients. Well, that's impossible, right? You have to get granular. You have to get small. You have to get specific. Once you do, then you can really empathize with the people you seek to serve. And once you do that, you can tell a story that specifically speaks to them. Or if you're looking for funding, you can tell your story in a specific manner so they understand where exactly those funds would go, why exactly they are needed, who is going to benefit, how you are going to accomplish that program, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like pitching. I'm in the film and television world. If I'm pitching a television show and it's about the same topic that someone else is, I need to explain why I'm the person to do it because of my unique experience and knowledge and skill set. Why it should be told in this manner because of the potential audience that would like this show versus the other one. It all has to come back to being specific. And this happens all the time, especially when we're competing for funds. We're scared to do that because we think it's going to make us stand out and alienate us. And that worries us. That makes us feel like people will not, support us, or they'll see us as the outsider and therefore will be eliminated from the running. But it's actually the opposite. Standing out is the best way to set yourself apart. So you have to lean into that, and you have to be a little bit vulnerable and courageous to do that. And the way to make it a little bit easier so you don't feel so vulnerable doing that is to clearly identify your mission, who you seek to serve, and how and why, and more importantly, why you're the organization to do it. So again, you have to be specific to understand how to tell your story in a stronger manner.
Let's make it very practical now and really get into the nitty-gritty just for a few minutes. So many NPOs basically have a cell phone and maybe a cheap lav mic at their disposal. So can you provide tips or some guidance for nonprofits and churches in crafting and sharing impactful stories on a limited budget or even with limited resources?
Absolutely. This is precisely what I do. First of all, it is always the story first over the production value. You can have the best camera, the best lighting, a big crew, and if you don't have a good message, it doesn't matter. No one will watch it. No one will listen. No one will resonate. No one will change. No one will donate, et cetera, et cetera. On the flip side, you can shoot with your smartphone without the lav mic. And I do, lav mics are great. It makes the audio sound better, which is why I sound so fabulous right now. This is not a lav mic, right? But if I didn't have this mic and I'm still giving you great gems about storytelling, are you going to leave this conversation being like, well, I mean, he had some interesting points, but I couldn't hear him very well, so I'm not going to listen to anything. No, you're going to be like, I wish the audio was better, but man, I loved what he said about just picking up your smartphone and speaking from the heart and being specific about your story, right? Yeah. So the point is, the story always weighs more. Now, should you have decent production value? Of course, as good as you can. And here's the biggest point that I want to make about this point. So often, we get in our heads and we think that we can't do something unless we have these tools instead of just starting. Yeah. Start first, because the message is way more important than the medium. I'll say that again. The message is more important than the medium. Then as you go on, you add tools to your toolbox, right? But if you're a skilled carpenter and all you have is a handsaw, but you understand how to put wood together in a way that is strong and structured, that will stand, then you can do that with a handsaw and a hammer, right? Mm-hmm. Now, will it be easier? Will you be able to move faster with an electric power saw, a circular saw? Of course. Would you be able to move faster with a nail gun? Of course. But first, you have to understand the skill of building. right? And then you get better, but it doesn't mean you can't do it when all you have is the handsaw and the hammer, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the tools just make you better and more efficient and faster. But if I don't know how to build a doghouse, and you give me a circular saw and a nail gun, that's not going to make me know how to build the house anymore. In fact, now I might be taking the metaphor too far here, but it'd be very dangerous if I don't know how to build and I'm cutting with those powerful tools, or I'm shooting a nail gun and I don't know where nails are supposed to go, right?
Absolutely.
So similarly, you probably won't cut your hand off if you have a nice camera you don't know how to use, but it ain't going to help you tell better stories in a way that inspires fundraising and donors.
Yeah. Wow.
I'll say this to just put a cap on that. No tool is better than the hand that holds it. You have to work on the skill first and then add tools to your toolbox.
I think many people are wary to just get out there and capture the stories and get the story out there and tell it. So I think in closing, how can you, or what do you say to encourage people working at an NPO or a church member to just stand up and get the stories?
The thing that's holding them back is they're being selfish. I'll be very blunt. It's your own ego or insecurity that's holding you back, or the collective ego and insecurity of the organization. Now, everyone is in the nonprofit game because they want to make a change in the world. They want to help people. They want to make an impact, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I know the answer to that, right? You don't go into the nonprofit world to make big bucks. No. You go there because you want to make a difference, right? And you want to have a decent job, hopefully, along the way. Now, if you flip your focus from that voice inside your head that's telling you those limiting beliefs, if you flip your focus fully to those that you seek to serve, which is what a nonprofit is about and a church is about, then you can lose that imposter syndrome. You can lose those limiting beliefs, because once you realize that creating that video is not about you and how you look, but more about communicating to just that one person on the other end that doesn't care that it's not perfect video, that doesn't care that you don't have a lav mic. They need to hear that message today. That's who you're speaking to. And once your focus is fully on them and out of your head, it becomes way, way, way easier to do that. And I would say that if you don't put yourself out there and communicate to those people who need to hear it, you are doing them a disservice. If I had a flat tire and I didn't have the tools, I didn't have a jack and a lug nut wrench in my car, and I'm stranded on the side of the road with this flat tire, and it's rush hour traffic and it's raining, and you drive past me knowing full well that you have those things in the back of your car, and you wave and be like, "Hey, Rain, good luck," and keep driving past me. Well, that would be pretty messed up, wouldn't it? When you know full well that you could stop and lend me those tools. That's the same thing you're doing if you're not putting yourself out there and telling the story that could potentially help somebody else that you're trying to serve with your nonprofit or your church. That's the same thing. That metaphor might sound silly, but that's what you're doing. If you know that you have something that could help someone, and you're worried about yourself because you might not sound right, or you haven't done it before, or you don't have the right tools, you're not worrying about that person you're trying to serve, right? You have to start first, and then you get better. Now, I'm not saying don't study on how to do it, but don't get caught up in thinking that you need this, then you need that, then you need this. All you need is a message and a way to deliver it. And right now in 2024, almost all of us have that in our pockets. It's never been easier to share your story, but people are still reluctant and reticent to do it because they think they need certain things. You don't. You just need to speak from the heart, tell a powerful story with whatever tools that you have. If it's just text in an email newsletter, that's fine. If it's just, in person when you're at events and fundraising events, that's fine. If you do have a smartphone and you want to have a social media platform, great, even better.
It's so interesting, and I want to ask you, this is really my last question, but I noticed something, and I want to test if you also noticed it, is Let's talk about social media. If you, and I mean, I've done that before. You produce this amazing video, you stabilize all your shots, you put your audio through some or other speech engine that tidies it up and makes it sound like studio quality audio, and you've got these amazing titles and lower thirds and what. And you publish that onto social media, and you like reach 50 people, you get 5 likes. And then the next time you don't have time for this whole production, you just take up your phone, you take a shaky video with terrible audio, but there's a story in it. You post that on social media. It's absolutely organic and real and in the moment. And that thing also almost becomes viral.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people care about the message and they care about authenticity, and they want to hear from other people. They don't want things that are super doctored up, because I think what's happened in the collective subconscious of folks these days is, well, one, we're tired of being scammed. And when we see something sometimes that's overproduced, we know that it's created by a company and there's been a budget. And that starts to make us subconsciously think that, am I being manipulated here? Whereas if you just pick it up and, hey, I'm a person and I'm speaking from the heart, humans care about other humans, right? So it's a little easier for us to listen to what you have to say when you're not using so many devices that we might feel subconsciously you're trying to use to trick us, right? It's like, well, you're using all these flashes and animations. And so I know, see, people are hip to it now. They know that that is an attention grabbing thing. People understand more than, I mean, this isn't the 60s of world of advertising where you just put money behind something and put an ad out there and they see like, oh, well, that's the razor. That's a Gillette razor. So that's what I'm going to buy. Like with the internet, everybody is smart. Everybody is educated. You can't hit them with that stuff anymore. You have to be from the heart. You have to be authentic, right? And you have to know what you have to offer them and why they should care. You're interrupting their day. It better be for something that's going to either inspire them or educate them or entertain them. And if you can do all of them, then you have something very powerful. And stories are known to engage people's minds. Absolutely. So if they learn something from them, or it's an inspiring story, or if you move them emotionally, that is what's going to be effective. Not all the tools and tricks in the world. Now, if you can add some of those things once you have that core story, great, because it can be entertaining and it's good to break it up visually so that you keep their attention. But none of it's going to work if you don't have the spine of the piece, which is the story.
Tell me, I know you made you said in the beginning that we are just around the corner from each other, but I mean, you sipping on your morning coffee, I'm getting ready for bed almost. So we are quite far removed from each other. But if there's someone in SA that's listening to this podcast now and feels like, hey man, I want to learn more from this guy, Rain Bennett, is there a way for us to learn more?
Oh, please. Yes, absolutely. This is what I do. First of all, well, I'll always say this. I want to give respect to my mom, who named me Rain Bennett. Bennett, she didn't really have much of a say in, but Rain she did. And I say that to say there aren't a lot of us, or maybe any of us out there. If you Google Rain Bennett, you will find me, I promise. But one thing, I have many free resources for folks. The most my presence is most felt in my podcast, The Storytelling Lab. We have maybe 150 episodes. A lot of great marketers, writers, filmmakers, storytellers on there that I feature. And then also I'm on social media, but TikTok is where I have my biggest following. So a lot of free tips there, but I'm on all of the platforms. And then rainbennett.com is my website. If you want something a little bit deeper, I just wrote a book a couple of years ago called 6 Second Stories, which is literally about this. How do we, in short form video, tell compelling stories when we don't have a lot of resources? That's literally the theme of the book, which just released a week ago in audio version, if you like audiobooks.
Yes.
So I would suggest the audiobook because I read it. So there's a little bit of added value there. I add a few things that are kind of off the cuff as I was reading it. and I'm super entertaining, as you probably well know by now. But yeah, Rain Bennett, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have a lot of free content out there. If you'd like to take it further, we can do that. I still do coaching and consulting as well. And for a lot of businesses, I kind of serve as what I call a CSO, which is a chief storytelling officer, a CSO on the go. So if your organization doesn't have the budget for something like that, having someone like me come in maybe once a month and helping make sure that your overall branding message is aligned so that all the pieces of media and content that you make are aligned with that overall organization narrative. That means your email newsletters. That means your social media content. That means your annual appeal video. That's at least what we have in the States for nonprofits. All of that branding should be tied together and feel the same, have the same tone, and subscribe to the same overall company or organization narrative. And if you don't have that, then all of these little pieces aren't cohesive and tied together, and that's an issue, and that's what I help organizations do.
Okay, wonderful. So we've linked to all your socials and your website in the description of this episode.
Lovely.
Rain, man, thanks so much for your time and your valuable input. It was such an honor having you on the show today. So as we wrap up this insightful conversation with Rain, remember that storytelling is not a luxury. It's a powerful tool that can drive change even when resources are scarce. We hope that the tips that Rain shared in today's episode inspire nonprofits and churches to amplify their impact through the art of storytelling. Until next time, take care of yourself.